when you get some degree of insight into your reactive states and to our habits of thinking, and then gain some degree of mastery over identifying with them and following through with them, so much opens up to you, not only in your own state of well-being, but how you are with other people. You can see yourself doing previous reactive states, and through this practice, you can see them happening in a way that gives you insight so that you can manage them differently and learn to respond more skillfully in the future.
The Vidal Speaks podcast.
Episode 90, Lani Muelrath on the Mindful Vegan. Welcome to Vidal Speaks. My name is Deborah Vidal, former 11-year LPGA golf pro turned classical homeopath, certified plant-based nutritionist, and wellness coach. Each week here on Vidal Speaks, we bring you knowledge, inspiration, or natural remedies to help you take charge of your health and feel your best. I believe health is freedom and knowledge is power. So tuning in each week will give you the power to take steps towards freeing yourself from the chains that hold you back from having the energy to do all you want in life. No matter where you are in your journey of wellness, Vidal Speaks can help. I promise. Hi there, Vidal Speakers. How are you today, my friends? Are you feeling you want to get a little better control of your weight or maybe your eating habits? Is there anything in life you would like to change? Are you happy with your relationships, whether they're your intimate ones or your family or work relationships? How do you feel about them? Do you wish you had more mental power to feel differently about yourself? And another question, how many of you have driven home and not even remembered stopping at the lights, as if your driving was just a reactive mode that you programmed inside you to do daily? Or how do you feel when you're doing a chore that you don't love so much? Would you like to feel better about that? Well, if you've answered yes to any of these questions, then you're going to love the show today, because today I have Lani Muelrath back to teach us about mindfulness and how it can change our lives. Mindfulness is a big buzzword these days, I know, but it's certainly not a new idea. As a matter of fact, it's a very old tradition or practice, as you're going to learn today. And with the chaotic life we're all thrown in today, we do all need to learn this. We're living a life where many of us are working 2 jobs, parenting, trying to live healthy, eat healthy, overcome debt, and all these financial stresses. And we're often doing 3 things at once. And even if we're only doing one thing, we're usually not even paying attention to the one thing that we're supposed to be doing. Imagine how different life could be if we could just focus and be in the moment, every moment of the day. Do you guys remember in Dr. Hanscom's episodes, which were number 71 and 84, where he spoke about a process that he called active mindfulness, and that he used that in the operating room, which helped him lessen his complication rates by 80%? Wow, I guess that's proof how much better we can all be doing if we could just pay attention and be more mindful. Imagine how good our relationships could be too, because so much goes wrong when we can't communicate or if we don't pay attention to our partners or our family members. Imagine how much better our eating habits would be if we actually paid attention to how we were reacting to eating, or if we understood why we overeat or grab the wrong foods. Imagine how much more satisfying work or chores could be if we could enjoy the process, not the outcome. Remember, it's about that saying, don't forget to stop and smell the roses. It's not just getting to your destination, it's the journey, right? And as a pro golfer, I had to work really hard on mindfulness. Golf's a game that's not so easy because you can be somewhere else all the time because the ball's not moving, so your mind can wander. Other sports, you're running around doing these great moves because you're just athletically responding to a moving ball. I'm not saying that's easy, but it's easier because it's a physical reaction. It seems in golf, we're always somewhere else other than where we should be focused. That's why I believe golf is so difficult. Anyways, as you can see, this show is for everyone. You guys are going to love it, I'm sure. And before we go talk to Lani, you know the routine. Let me tell you a little bit about her now. Lani Muelrath, M.A., is an award-winning health educator, professor, best-selling author, inspirational speaker, and TV host widely sought for her expertise in mindful, active, plant-sourced nutrition and vegan living. Lani has been featured on CBS-TV, ABC-TV, Prevention Magazine, USA Today, Huffington Post, The Saturday Evening Post, and NSPR. She created and starred in her own CBS television show, Lani's All Heart Aerobics, and has served as presenter and consultant for the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, the Complete Health Improvement Project, and Plant Pure Nation. Recognized as a thought leader and pioneer in the integration of vegan living, fitness, and mindfulness, Lani's approach blends plant-based nutrition and compassion, mind-body awareness, movement, and transformational techniques from mindfulness meditation practice. She has been teaching in health, fitness, and wellness for over 4 decades. Lani's been a vegetarian vegan since 1973, when she also started teaching yoga and began a meditation practice. The ethical considerations of treatment of animals, the environment, and health were natural outgrowths of these practices. Her early studies in meditation took her to India on retreats several times. Since then, she undertook the study of insider mindfulness meditation, which she has practiced for over 25 years. She has studied with some of the best-known leaders in the mindfulness practice. Certified in mindfulness meditation instruction and plant-based nutrition from Cornell University, Lani is also an authorized mind-body specialist and behavior change specialist. Her multiple teaching credentials include yoga, physical education, and advanced fitness nutrition. Having discovered through personal experience and training that mindfulness practices are a proven method of getting beneath the surfaces of these obstacles, thus helping one overcome negative patterns of thinking and behaving by training the mind in a particular fashion, she began introducing mindfulness meditation to her clients, naturally blending the 3 pillars of food, fitness, and frame of mind into her work. Lani has also written 3 books, Fit Quickies, the 5-minute targeted body shaping workouts, and The Plant-Based Journey, and her new book, which is out this week, you guys, called The Mindful Vegan. It's a 30-day plan for finding health, balance, peace, and happiness. Lani lives in the Sierra Cascade foothills in Northern California with her husband, Greg, with whom she travels the world on wildlife advocacy projects and outdoor adventures like trekking, hiking, bicycling, and scuba diving. They've also traveled extensively as volunteer field biologists, working internationally with endangered animals such as sea turtles and albatross birds. Okay, you guys ready? I said, are you guys ready? Now pay attention. Only kidding. Okay, here we go. Let's go talk to Lani. Hi, Lani. I'm so happy to have you back on the Vidal Speaks podcast, especially because we're celebrating your new book release called The Mindful Vegan. So welcome.
Yes. Thank you so much, Deborah. I'm very excited to be here. This steam is gathering for book launch, and it's a very exciting time, and there's been such a positive response. So yes, exciting. Glad to be here.
Well, it's something very well needed, but it's also exciting because it's such a big work to do a book. I'm so envious because I need to do that. And you've just put out another great one. I've had a chance to look it over, and it's fantastic. So, but what a long process and a really big labor of love. So thanks from all of us because it's beautiful. So let's talk about that. First, maybe it's a good idea. I know the book is called Mindful Vegan, and what I want to tell you what I love about it the most is that it's not just a book of information about veganism or how to be mindful even as a vegan. It's really a book that lays out in very much detail a 30-day plan of what to do. So it's like you don't really need to ask, am I doing it? It's like, here it is. Do this for 30 days. It's simple. I love that.
Oh, good.
That's so cool. So anyway, what made you think of doing the book in this way?
Well, I wanted people to be immersed in exactly doing this. Just like you said, it's nice to read about all this stuff and we get all inspired, but it's too easy then to put something aside and go, well, I'll get around to that. That's a great idea. I wanted to get people started right away because the results are dose respondent. Even a few minutes a day make a difference. So I put the 30-day plan together, as you know, so you start easy. Day one is like 1 minute. I teach one fundamental of formal practice, and then so on and so on up to the 30 days. And as you know, along the way, I have a lot of research embedded, personal stories, and also direct application. You know, we all hear about this mindfulness stuff, and I'm really trying to bring it down to earth so that it is a practical tool because that's where it made a difference for me.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's kind of trendy right now, mindfulness, but it's been around a long time.
Yes, thousands of years.
Yeah, so old things come back like our fashion, but this has been around a really long time. But it's good that you said that because it is kind of trendy now, but I think it's trending for the right reason because we're getting so busy and so chaotic and life is so, full of stuff for people, and we really have to learn to be experts at this so that we can balance real life. And so I think there's a reason why it's popular right now.
Mm-hmm. So needed.
Yeah. So I know you're trained in mindfulness. You talked a little bit about it in our first episode where we were talking about your other book, but just give us a little brief rundown about your training in mindfulness and how you got interested in it.
All right. Good. Well, I started actually meditating probably about 45 years ago. And it was a different technique than the technique I teach in the Mindful Vegan, but it still gave me a chance to experience concentration a little bit and learn a little bit about meditation. But it didn't really give me the results I was looking for, which was a little more equanimity. I really wanted to get a handle on my food, eating, and weight problem. I knew I had a relationship with food, eating, in my body that was not optimal. It was taking too much of my attention and my mental focus. So I thought maybe meditating would help me out, but the technique I was doing didn't really do that. So one day, about 10 years after I'd started, I came across this book while we were traveling in a bookstore, and it was about Vipassana meditation, which is the kind that I teach in the book. And it's non-sectarian. You don't have to have any religious beliefs. Anyone can do it. And I just really loved the ideas that were presented, but there weren't any instructions with it. Just like, you're saying, you get these books these days and it doesn't have the instruction. And this was quite a while ago. It was before all these books were out, before we had the internet and you could just Google anything. So for a while, I just held on to that book and was inspired by the idea. And finally, I came across a place that I could go to a 10-day retreat and learn this technique. So I signed up for that. And that was where the turning point happened for me in applying this to my life. It was this, as you know, I think you've been on them too, Deborah, those silent retreats that last many days.
Yeah, I did one of, I think mine was like 4 days or something, but it was a very great experience, actually.
Well, it's just you and your thoughts and your body, and those are actually the doors with which you walk to apply mindfulness. And people say, "Well, mindfulness, does that mean I'm full of my mind?" Actually, it means that your mind is fully attentive to what you are doing. So specifically, and I'm going to give my really short definition of mindfulness practice because it really makes it kind of shines a light on how this played itself out in my life, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so I was going to ask you to define it because we need a very specific idea.
Yes. Well, as I say in the Mindful Vegan, mindfulness is a specific form of mental training and the particular kind of attention you bring to your daily activities. Now, together, those two things lead to dramatic reductions in reactivity and also the cultivation of positive brain states. So what happened is this did end up making it possible for me to navigate we all have these reactions to disquieting states in different ways. For some people, it's food and eating. That was my refuge from the inner turmoil we all experience. Some people will maybe become a workaholic or get immersed in work or some project. Some people become obsessed with a fitness program or a diet program or zoning out online. We all seem to have one refuge or another, and they all respond to this same attentiveness to being present rather than mind-wandering state, which most of us are spending at least 50% of the time in, to being more present. And I want to elaborate on that. You got my definition. There was like those two little sentences in there.
Right.
But people will go, what's wrong with mind wandering? I love to daydream and it's so relaxing. But actually, we find that with this half of our time spent in mind wandering, if we really think about it, a lot of that time is spent rehashing the past, maybe saying coulda, woulda, shoulda, some kind of regret, some kind of, wince, like, oh, why did I say that? Or why did I do that? And off the time we're maybe projecting into the future and actually catastrophizing, imagining the worst thing that could happen. And this is different from like a little rehearsal maybe for a presentation you're giving, that it makes sense. That's attentive and focused, but that's different from our excessive rumination, which is our minds rolling things over and over again.
Right.
It feels like we're chewing on something. And the problem, everyone, carefully listen, to not having some degree of mastery over when our minds wander off and when they don't, is that this excessive rumination also starts to have us inhabit parts of our brains where also reside cravings, sadness, depression, obsessions, addictions, everything that we're nailing problems on. Those are the things that we go, if only I could not do this, if only I were better at this, only I could eat an exercise program, if only I could follow this healthy food plan. Well, letting our minds wander apparently has a direct effect on our ability to follow through because of this. And also degrees of happiness. That's why I talk about cultivating positive brain states.
Yeah, so from what you're saying, it sounds like there's a couple things. It's not only just the wandering mind, but there's kind of this sense of distress that we get inside of us because life is busy or chaotic, or we have these addictions or these problems or whatever it is. For everyone, it's different. But in your book, you said that you talked about how everyone reacts differently to this state of disquiet. And you said some people make themselves like chronically overbusy, or they overexercise, or they become workaholics or even alcoholics. And some try to overachieve or become perfectionists. So in other words, this can be a cover up or a distraction for an emotion that we're not trying to deal with underneath. Is that right?
Yes. And I think it's important for everyone to realize that they're not alone in this. That just we have different ways of playing it out, which are common amongst many of us. But that sense of anxiety, and I like that word disquieting state. For some reason, it came to me while I was preparing for this book, because that's what it is. It's disquieting. And we need to understand that's actually part of our biology, because it's that part of us that's on alert. We need to be able to discern the sticks from the snakes, right? We need to be able to pay attention to impending danger. The problem is that we've gone overboard with that, and not understanding where that's coming from can make us react to that in a way that is unskillful. So understanding that, if we can learn and watch what's happening in our minds and our bodies, you start to learn so much about yourself and how reactive we are. And I'm getting a feeling everyone's going to get an idea what reaction means. Those are those knee-jerk reactions. And you just went through the long list, whether it's overindulgence in some kind of food or other substance or some behavior or any of those things. Those are automated responses, which means reaction. So with mindfulness practice, you start to learn how to navigate these disquieting states so that you can respond more skillfully.
Yeah, and some of those can go very deep. Like it could be when you even listed perfectionism, because people who are perfectionistic may be doing that as a cover up or a distraction for some feeling underneath of not feeling good enough or not feeling loved or whatever the emotion is underneath that. So sometimes traits that look like good, it's good to be ambitious and it's good to be productive. But people that are doing something to an extreme that never can balance the ins and outs of being mindful and then allowing ourselves to be busy. I think that's always the key to life, is learning how to be on both sides.
You put that perfectly. And I really like the way you summed that up. And I also want to say that when we're talking about, what was it said? You play it out when you maybe are indulging one of these things, or you go to perfectionism or obsession. You just used a word that I like. I can't remember what it was. It's a good word, but the one I really like to use is like refuge. You know, we take refuge in these. And it can be very culturally supported. You're exactly right, like overproductivity. And this doesn't mean that productivity is a bad thing. But we all know the type A personality who can't even sit still for a minute. And you just know there's something unsettling going on. There's an agitation. And what we're looking for is happiness. Not that we shouldn't be productive or we shouldn't become fit or shouldn't have a good nutrition plan. I think we're really clear on understanding that it's a going in overboard that causes unhappiness. And that's what we're looking for, is happiness, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now I want to backstep just for a minute, because there were two things in the book that I would like to read. They're just little quotes. One is when you were talking about Vipassana, which is the meditation, that's like an insightful meditation. I wanted to read what you wrote. You said Vipassana meditation could give us insight into our thoughts and emotions, help us simply be present with our feelings instead of trying to figure them out or escape them, and open up our capacity for equanimity. I think that's very well stated. That's really lovely. And
thank you.
It's like you said, Vipassana is a meditation, but mindfulness is also a meditation, but it's not one where you just stay there. It's like learning how to be in that state and come out and go back into that state and come out. And so that you're basically just becoming much more aware.
Well, that's the idea. The idea is to learn these tools of being present that you then transfer into every single activity in your non-formal meditation practice. So the idea is to make them seamless. So when you think about it, and Vipassana is the pronunciation I learned. So maybe you learned a different pronunciation, but that very word can help people who are familiar with yoga, because we all know the word asana, or a position. So Vipassana has a connection there with seeing reality as it is and being present with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I like that when you can connect things together, it makes the meaning easier. Yeah, that's really cool. And the other quote that I really loved is the one that Dr. Melanie Joy wrote in your book. So I want to read that.
Oh, good.
It says, mindfulness is probably the most important practice we can ever undertake. The more we're able to be mindful or present, the more we're able to feel authentically connected with ourselves and others. The ability to be present is at the heart of all healthy relationships with other humans, with non-humans, with the planet, and with ourselves. When we are present, we relate to all aspects of our lives, including eating habits, with greater awareness, compassion, and health. Wow, that's so powerful, Lani.
I was so honored that Melanie gave me a lot of time. I had a couple interviews with her, and for those who may not be familiar, she is the one who authored Why We Love Dogs, Wear Cows, and Eat Pigs. It's a big, and she just has a new book out too called Beyond Beliefs, which helps people with what I approach in the Mindful Vegan too, and that's navigating conversations with others who may not be eating as consciously as you are. You know, there's tension in conversations between vegans and non-vegans, and I explain a little bit where that comes from and how to use this technique of mindfulness to help you become more equanimous in those situations and how to navigate them more skillfully. So I want to go back to the first quote, because you said, and then we'll get back to Melanie in a minute, because you ended, the last word in that first quote was equanimity, and it was about cultivating these states. You have it in front of you. You can give it the last sentence.
Okay, it says it helps us simply be present with our feelings instead of trying to figure them out or escape them, and open up our capacity for equanimity.
Okay, capacity for equanimity. Listen, everyone, equanimity, harmony, compassion, these are all natural traits that are in existence right now for every one of us. Joy, happiness. And these are the states that you start to learn more about as you practice mindfulness meditation practice, because through this process, you are getting underneath this busy mind. You can't stop the mind or tell it don't think. It's just, it's set up to do that. It's just doing its job. But you learn how to be present with that. And instead of running with each thought or identifying with it, you let them move on by so that you can inhabit that natural place of equanimity and happiness that you naturally have. It's endogenous to you. And then this moves forward in your life because you can inhabit every situation in your life more from that place. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And I was wondering, I just was thinking, like, is this something we're better at and then we lose as we get age, or is it something that we are never that good at? We just have to develop this skill as we come into humanhood and adulthood.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit different for all of us, depending on how closely connected we were with that as children, how much it may have gotten enculturated out of it. I mean, look at the example simply with connection with animals. Everyone loves animals. Everyone understands when children snuggle up to animals and feel bad when the bugs get squashed. But somehow when we're adults, it's looked at as like, oh, it's just an animal, or they're wimpy for having this compassion for other animals. So it's there. It's just gotten kind of trashed over.
Yeah. Right.
So back to Melanie, as I was so excited that she actually recommends the Mindful Vegan in two particular arenas. One, in her new book, because in her work with compassion fatigue, which those two words just kind of are self-explanatory, especially vegans who are really either out on the front lines of animal rights or vegan advocacy, to those of us who have to struggle with these conversations with non-vegans or sitting next to someone day after day at the office lunch who's, heaping on the ribs or whatever. That can be unsettling. And all these build up what's called compassion fatigue. So she recommends the Mindful Vegan and mindfulness specifically through the processes of the book because of the 30 days that people use this. And she's also got it recommended she's in Berlin right now. She's doing a lot of work in Europe. And she has created SIVA, which is the Center for Effective Vegan Advocacy. And she is in all her presentations now and trainings advising this book to people that are studying with her. So this to me is a huge endorsement because I respect and honor and value her work so deeply.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought Melanie into the conversation.
Right. And I need to get her on the podcast because she's an amazing person. I've read her book, so hopefully I can get her on. That would be great.
It would, and I'm sure she'd love to do it if you can just coordinate schedules. Because she just has a way of putting this all together so articulately and so common sense like, and her brain just works brilliantly in, well, of course, this is how this is how that is. And you go, well, okay. We all wish we could be as articulate, I tell you.
Right. So, Lani, how did you connect the idea of mindfulness with vegan? Where's the connection? You can be mindful in anything, but I'm curious. I know you're a vegan, so the book Mindful Vegan, I'm just wondering why you wanted to put the two together.
Yeah, okay. I've got a couple parts to that, okay? A couple parts to the answer. Number one is, with all the books about mindfulness, especially mindful eating out there, I'm sure you've read some of them and seen some of them. Okay, let's find one that says, let's really think about what's on our plate and how it got there. Not a one of them is on a vegan nutrition. Not a one that I could find.
That's true.
And I thought, well, isn't that the
Right.
basic element of mindful eating? Is not, I feel like a burger, so I guess I'll have one and I'll watch and make sure I don't eat too much of it. And I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but that's how it seemed to me. I thought this is crazy. And there are also many teachers in the mindfulness arena who are omnivorous. Many are vegetarian, so they're moving in the right direction. But what does it say about our consideration of what's happening in the dairy industry?
Well, I know I have this problem with environmentalists when they call themselves
Same
an
thing.
environmentalist, and then they're out there doing all their work to save the planet and even animals, and then they're eating animals.
Yeah, it seems like a real disconnect to me. And so I think that's the key, is that we need to figure out how to best connect them to make this so it happens on a bigger playing field than what they're doing. So that was one thing that really motivated me. And as far as connecting me with vegan in it, when I became a vegetarian, as I told you, like 45 years ago, the kind of meditation that I was doing also was a vegetarian path. So, and actually even eggs were off the table. Everything animal product related was gone except the dairy, probably because I think it's because this particular teaching that I was following originated from India, and they just love their ghee and their
Yeah,
their
ghee,
yogurt and
ghee,
everything.
I
Yeah,
know.
and you just don't want to shake
Ghee
the
and
table up
yogurt.
too much. Yeah. So what happened is then when I became through mindfulness meditation practice, as the years went on with that. And I would come and go from vegan, vegetarian, try it for a few weeks, a few months, and then, wanted some cheese, I wanted some yogurt. And it just started feeling more and more dissonant to do that. And I even remember, and I write about this in the Mindful Vegan. I was teaching sixth grade full time at this time, and I would drive through this beautiful bucolic valley on the way to work every day, where there were dairies, and these beautiful cows were out grazing. And I just remember I would just slip down in my seat and go, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." And I thought, this is nuts. Obviously, this bad feeling about something I still have on my plate is causing some kind of inner dissonance, is disquieting. All these things disturb our inherent happiness and peace and equanimity. So you start to, as that became more and more apparent to me, Deborah, that's when I finally ousted dairy products. And what a difference that made, where I could...
I know. I
Yeah.
think that's by far the single biggest change. When someone takes all dairy out of their diet, things really start transforming. But I mean, I'm not saying that meat's any better.
Yeah.
But I found in my practice that so many
Yeah.
people are intolerant to dairy that don't think they are.
Oh.
And then they take it out for 3 months and all their symptoms went away.
Yeah. Well, I think intolerance goes on many levels. So it could be a physical intolerance,
does.
and I think it's an emotional and psychic intolerance too, because you're bearing up a whole heap of compassion by rationalizing that or compartmentalizing it. That's what I talk about in the plant-based journey. I was kind of compartmentalizing that part of my diet
Yeah.
just because it was.
Well, look, I mean, you really have to become the master of that if you're a meat eater, because how else could you eat it when you would know one time what they're doing?
Yes, and
you
that's
you have to live in denial.
yeah, and even those who know have to shut it off.
Yeah, for sure. So, what's the actual goal of your 30-day program in this book?
The actual goal is to give everyone the specific tools of how to do this very simple practice, to try it on for a while and see if it makes a difference for them. I say that there are many paths to awakening, and this one has been the one for me, and I hope that it's something that you can use. And if you have another way that keeps you connected, or you found historically helps you maintain some degree of mastery over your habits of thinking and reactivity, then by all means continue cultivating that or dig it back up and start again. But I'm hoping everyone will try these tools on and see how they work for them, because it shifted my life, not only in relation to what I was primarily looking for, which was a food, eating, and my body connection, but every other aspect of my life. When you get some degree of insight into your reactive states and to our habits of thinking, and then gain some degree of mastery over identifying with them and following through with them, so much opens up to you, not only in your own state of well-being, but how you are with other people. So it not only affected my relationship with food, eating, and my body, it affected my primary relationship. I mean, I've been married my husband and I went vegetarian 45 years ago together. So I've been married a long time. And this simple practice you can get a lot of reactivity built up after 45 years of living with someone. And this has given me, and I'm continually working with it. You can see yourself doing previous reactive states. And through this practice, you can see them happening in a way that gives you insight so that you can manage them differently and learn to respond more skillfully in the future. Every family relationship, every work relationship, even my relationship with what I'm doing and my relationship with myself shifted because of this one simple practice.
Time to take a little break and get your drink, hopefully of a nice fermented, some kind of kombucha or Kavita or some kind of wonderful drink. And while you do that, I just want to say thank you to you guys for being such great listeners and passing the word on to help other people. That's our mission. We got to reach as many people as we can. So my call to action today is just to ask you guys to share the show, and please try to tell 1, 2, 3, 4, even 5 people today about this show, and have them listen to the Vidal Speaks podcast, because you can learn so much. We're all learning together. We all need to help each other. So thanks for coming here every week, you guys, and sitting around the table with me and just talking health and learning as much as we can to heal our environment, to heal ourselves, and just to help each other. And lastly, I just want to say thanks for using that Amazon banner. I so appreciate it. If you haven't done it yet, please consider it, and thank you so much for all of you that have done it. Okay, you ready to get back to the show? Here we go. Well, that's what's so good about working on mindfulness. I'm more aware of it because I was a professional golfer and I worked a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Learning, because athletes use this kind of technique too. As a matter of fact, I interviewed this doctor on my podcast, Dr. Hanscom, who the person that taught it to him is actually a golf pro, and they taught him how to use this, and he's incorporating what he calls it kind of active mindfulness was his name for it, but he brought it into his operating room. He's a spine surgeon and he sees extremely complicated cases. And so he was explaining how sometimes the team's working on the patient and there's a big problem happening, and he can feel like the stress of every person at the table, and he feels his shoulders getting tighter to his ears, and he can kind of like that saying, where the tension's so thick you could cut it with a knife. And he just takes a breath and he says, everyone, feel the floor under your feet. Put your right hand on the table and feel the coolness of the stainless steel. And, how is your low back feeling or whatever. He's just taking people out of the state that they're in and trying to connect them to awareness of the moment. And then everything changes and they get back and the whole situation's different. And he says it's lessened his complication rate 80%.
80%. Well, see, what was he said? He called it active
mindfulness.
Yeah, and in the mindful journey, the mindful vegan, as you know, I give it 2 names. I do formal practice and informal practice. And informal practice would be just like you described as active. And what a brilliant thing for that doctor to do, because feet on the floor, hands on the table. Okay, if everyone who's listening right now, if you're driving a car, you can still do this. Foot on the gas pedal, hand on the steering wheel. Can you feel that? Can you feel your hand on an object, and can you feel your foot on a surface? That is taking place in the present moment. You cannot experience this physical sensation for yesterday and you can't experience it for tomorrow. As soon as you bring yourself into your body, which is part of the formal practice that then transfers to the active practice or the informal practice, it brings you to the present. And that's a perfect opener, Deborah, for the first part of this training. And as many people know, many forms of meditation practice, and particularly mindfulness practice, begin with a focus on the breath. That's your point of concentration. And as I'm going to go back to the golfing guy again, the doctor, because I want to do an allegory on that.
Yeah.
But this again is because the breath is happening in the present moment. You can't breathe for yesterday. You can't breathe for tomorrow. So every time you bring your attention to the actual physical sensations of the breath, not imagining what it looks like, visualizing it going through your body, just feeling it like where it brushes in past your nose, you are right here, right now. And when people start doing that, all you have to do is sit here, and I set it up in 4 steps, the position and the anchor. And the anchor is feeling the breath. And when people start to do that, and their mind keeps wandering to the past, to the future, to the planning, they become aware of how unskilled we are at concentration. All I said was just watch that, what that feels like. Can you stay there?
Yeah.
And what happens is by doing that with this practice, through increased practice, you gain concentration so that you can actually kind of hold steady no matter what's happening during formal practice. You're watching the breath, you're feeling sensations in the body. You hold steady with it. There's an itch on your nose. Okay, let's just hold steady. It'll go away. Oh, there's a little twinge in my knee. Okay, just hold steady. And guess what? That transfers to being able to hold steady in disquieting conversations with others. You're stuck in traffic, when you're in a line someplace you don't want to be in line, which happens about half of our lives, it seems.
Lani, when you're in that hold steady thing, is that basically saying just go back to your breath?
Mm-hmm. You just keep going back to the point of anchor, and you do it with kindness and non-judgment and equanimity, because that's what you're practicing. If you are judgmental of yourself and saying, oh, well, there I go again, then you're practicing judgment and anger. You want to practice returning with equanimity and kindness. So the smart thing, too, about this doctor moving this into the operating room is bringing people into a more concentrated state. It just helps you arrive right here by, feeling where you are.
Right. Because as you mentioned, a lot of people who are anxious or have panic attacks, well, like in his case, if something's going wrong in the surgery, some helpers are going to respond by freezing up or being paralyzed, or, that's not good when you're on a surgical team. No, that's not a good,
I don't want to be on that table.
Right. So he gets everybody, like you said, grounded to where they are, focused on the here and the now, and then they're able to come back and with a different frame of mind, assess the situation and continue in a much more successful way than they were able to do in that state of fear and anxiety.
Yes, and that just goes to show another reason that's such a good example, Deborah, is it shows us how we all have that capacity anywhere, anytime. It's something that's within us, and we can learn how to master that shift back into more presence, which is just a way to be more connected with what's going on, whether it's the job in front of you or a conversation in front of you, instead of being disquieted again, and spread out in our thinking scattered and our energy scattered.
Yeah. Now, you were saying there were two ways, the way I was describing the active mindfulness. What did you call that? And what was the second way? And can you talk more about that one? The one where the doctor's doing, that's which one?
That's informal because it's application, it's active.
I see.
He called it active, but it's actually because in the practice, as I teach it in the book and as I do personally, I set aside a time each day for doing formal practice, which is sitting on my cushion or on the chair, doing the Vipassana meditation technique, which means your eyes are closed, you're watching the breath, you're holding your body still, and you continue to bring the attention back over and over again, which is all it is. That's all it is gaining some degree of mastery over your habits of thinking. And you do this through also watching the sensations in the body, which are taking place right now, and that can give you a lot of information about your physical and emotional state, which, by the way, also teaches you to be more in connection with your hunger and fullness signals, because we've shut many of our inner readers off on all these things.
Yeah,
so that's formal. And informal is taking that into every setting in your life and learning to be present so that when you're doing something, you're actually doing it. And I talk about, because we'll do this while you're doing it. So when you wash the dishes, you're washing the dishes. When you're driving to work, you're driving to work. And I think it might be really helpful, Deborah, to talk a little bit about the wandering mind, unhappy mind research that I talk about in the Mindful Vegan, because this is directly pertinent. And we brought this up at the beginning of the call, where we discussed how half of the time, and research tells us this, we're in a wandering mind state. That means either reflecting, rehashing, regretting the past, or catastrophizing about the future. The way this information came up, this was a study done at Harvard, and they had over 5,000 participants. I think they had 500,000 responses to the particular way that they collected information here, which I'll tell you about in a minute. There were people in it were age ranged from like 18 to 80. So it was a wide range of ages. They had about 80 different occupations selected among these 5,000 people. So in other words, it was a broad spectrum of human beings. Mm-hmm. And each of these responders on this survey was given an app on their phone where they would be pinged randomly about 3 times a day. And they had, or a few times a day, and they had to respond in the moment to 3 questions. One is, what are you doing? What are you thinking about? And how happy are you? So, for example, if you were driving to work, but you were thinking about next summer's trip to Hawaii, you would have to report those 2 things and then say what your happiness level was on the scale. Mm-hmm. So from this collected data, they found out that at least 50% of the time, we're not doing what we're doing fully. We're thinking about something else in the past or in the future. I don't want this to be confused with specific planning. Like, certainly if you're going to go on a trip, you go online, you look for your airplane connections, you see where you're going to, that's not wandering mind. That's specific designated tasks. So the connection that was made was that they found over and over again that people were happier when they were focused on what they were doing, even if they would rather be doing something else. So if I'm doing the dishes and I don't like doing the dishes, so I'm fantasizing about last summer in Italy, the happiness factor is actually higher if I am just here doing dishes than if I have this disparate state of being lost in the past, even though I think it's something that is a happy memory. See how that works? Mm-hmm. So what this tells us is if we can be more connected to what is happening in the present, so that, for example, when you're washing dishes, it doesn't mean, I have to love doing the dishes. That's not the point at all. The point is, can you be present with that just as you are with the breath during meditation? And it'll probably result in a less broken dishes. I mean, how many times have we, handled plates and we were rushed off or thinking about something else and we're just not being attentive and something may break inadvertently. But the idea is we can cultivate more personal happiness by just being present with what we're doing. And this even applied if people were on the commute to work. People would always say, they don't like their commute to work. But guess what? The responders on the survey, if they were just attentive to, I'm here in my car, I'm driving, I'm paying attention, that there was a happier state than if their minds were wandering.
Wow, that's so interesting. That's the part of the book where you were talking about doing versus being, or that's kind of in
Yeah.
the same realm what you're talking about. And I really love that part because, really in today's world, everyone's just so busy and we all have to get so much done. And so I think the problem with this is some people think, oh, right, okay, maybe that person has the life they can sit around and meditate and be mindful, but I've got 2 jobs and I got to take care of my family and this and this and this. But those are really just excuses because it's not really about living in one state or the other, as we were saying before. And I think the true success here is when you're doing, you can be doing. And when you're being. But the problem today is, like you're saying, people are doing dishes and somewhere else and thinking millions of other things. But if you're going to be there doing the dishes, just be attentive and do the dishes. And that it does seems like that would be at least more enjoyable because at least you're present and then you go on to the next thing and you're working, you have concentration and you have focus and you'll do a better job. And I mean, I have people all the time say, I don't even remember any of the red lights coming home. You hear people say that all the time. I just drive home.
That happens to me too. You just, And you make a good point that it's not whether too busy or not too busy, because what happens is by taking up this practice, you will be able to navigate all of that more skillfully instead of being frazzled and distracted, especially now that we're getting an idea that without having some degree of mastery over our mind's tendency to wander here and there and be grabbed by attention, that we're going to actually be less happy in whatever it is we are doing. And it's culturally supported. Someone's really busy and they're getting so much done. It's like, wow, they're doing so much. And some people even feel inadequate if they're not doing all that because they're thinking, my God, this person's doing so much. And here I can barely, get through my 8-hour day, job. So it really does transfer to all areas of life. And as I say in the Mindful Vegan, even though I build up to and adding another minute each day through the 30 days, that's to give us some solid training, but even 10 minutes a day have been found to be helpful. And honestly, no one has 10 minutes a day, but everyone does. Everyone does.
Yeah, that's so true. It really is true. And, when you were talking in there, you wrote something that said that being mindful helps us rewire our reactivity to life's ups and downs. I thought that's perfect. But can you explain how it helps us rewire? Like, I want to know what goes on.
Okay. Yes. As we were talking about earlier in our conversation, and that example of the doctor, your feet on the ground, your hand on the table, and my explanation of feeling the breath coming into your body is being there. You're very, very present with the sensations in your body. So when you're doing the Vipassana meditation, and I teach all these steps in the book, you start the first week just by focusing on the feeling of the breath as it enters your body, because you're gaining some degree of mastery over coming back to that over and over again. And it's also connecting you with a physical sensation, which is adding more weight to being in the present. All right? That makes sense?
Yeah.
So then the second week, I actually explain a lot about the physical sensations of the body and then describe how your physical sensations in your body, whether it's the tingling you might feel on the palms of your hands or any place else in your body, are actually giving you information. Every experience we have, everything that has some kind of emotion connected to it, which basically is everything. We think of emotion as being strong things like anger and love and rage, but actually everything has some kind of an emotional component, whether it's affection or love or kindness. Those are all kind of emotional feelings. And those all have a feeling to them too. So let me give an example of that. And I get into this in week 3. I'm trying to give you the crash course here on the call.
Right.
So week 2, we go into physical sensations that are just like your body in space, the tingling on your hands or your feet. And week 3 is connecting with emotions and how those feel in your body. So every strong emotion we feel, that's why they're called feelings, right? So for everyone, to give you a practical experience to answer your question, I want everyone to think right now to the last time you felt really angry. I'm sorry to take you into a downer space, but this is a really good illustration, and most people will connect with this immediately. Maybe it was earlier today. Maybe it was 5 minutes before this podcast ensued. Maybe it was last week. Think about something or someone in such circumstance that made you really angry, even if it was getting stuck in traffic, all right? So knowing that there was an anger experience, I bet everyone's been able to pull something up. Now, how did you know that you were angry? What in your body was anger feeling like? So we tend to think of anger, we're in our head because I'm mad about something. So let that be the entry point of something you are mad about. But now take it into your body. Now, usually anger will show up like as a lump in your throat, a knot in your gut, a tightness in your chest, maybe a tension in your face. Even hands can get clenched. All those are physical signs, but particularly those reside inside, because we've all been angry and experienced in a situation where it was uncool to show it at all. So you internalized it all, right? Maybe that will help someone dig it up. So Deborah, were you able to find something? You don't have to tell me what it was. Just did you find it? Okay, you found it. All right. So what happens is those physical experiences of those emotions, those things come up during meditation too, because formal practice. Because guess what? Even though you were seeking to bring your mind back to the present and on the breath, you better believe it's going to bring up that your mind's going to want to run with that thing that happened yesterday, or that person that said that thing to you this morning, or that your mind's going to go there. And then you're immediately also going to feel it in your body. And that's where Vipassana meditation steps in, because instead of getting lost in the story, oh, how dare he say that to me? Oh, I can't believe they did blah, blah, which just keeps it going. That does not end it. You can try to rationalize your way out of it. Never worked for me. It's just like you just go in circles. So what you do is in practice, in formal practice, you not only bring the attention back to the breath, but you also learn to put your attention onto the physical sensations that are being connected with what's going on. And your mind keeps going, want to go back to the story. It keeps wanting to ruminate excessively. And you understand that. You say, okay, I understand mind. That's your thing to do. But let's get into the physical sensation experience, because guess what? It opens up a whole new way of navigating them. So you start to see that these physical sensations, like that tightness in your throat, it can get tighter, it can get looser, it can be all of a sudden you notice it's gone. Instead of trying to hide from them, go with them, or run away from them, you just sit present with it. And it isn't always fun, and it isn't always comfortable, but it's a way to navigate it that gives you freedom. Because, and here's the next part to answer your question, do you see a way that might be helpful to you in navigating conversations or experiences in life, in active living?
Yeah, I think, if you have this sensation, you're saying like a tightness in a throat, and let's say in the future, now you're talking to somebody and you start feeling that same sensation again. If you have done this for a while and you become better at it, you kind of start going, oh, there's that feeling in my throat again. And I think you would get through the whole emotion of how it is to you faster, because you're probably able to let that feeling go because you've had practice at that. And if you can let that sensation go, then the rumination isn't going to be there because they're so connected.
Actually, what ends up happening, and that's a perfect, really good response, by letting yourself be present with the sensation. Did you hear what I just said? You're present with it. So now you're in the present moment. You aren't lost in what you're angry about with what that person is saying to you, or what you think they're going to say to you. And we all have those cemented relationships where we think, we know where they're going with this, and we already have the answer in our head. You bring the attention back to your sensation, and you don't push it away. You don't let go necessarily, but you don't grab it. You just watch it, which brings you into the present moment, which opens your heart and opens your ears to the person or thing or situation in front of you, instead of being your reactive self that is just caught up in this old story, getting more and more tense, more and more angry, and more physically tense. And that just shows up later when we have our hands halfway up the bag of cookies or start yelling at our kid, 5 hours later because we couldn't yell at that. It doesn't go away. It just gets buried if you don't sit there and navigate with it. So and that's kind of like when earlier in the call we were talking about the mindfulness practice when you're doing formal practice that you learn to hold steady and be present with. The same thing happens.
So in that moment, you're saying, let's say the person has this tight feeling in their throat, and you're saying like to sit with it. But if they're still feeling it and they're staying with it and they still feel it, then the way to navigate that, is it like by learning to go to your breath and try to learn to relax that feeling in your throat?
Well, it can be very helpful because to go to the breath right away, because that helps you connect with your body, and then you can expand from there to feeling what's going on. But you see what the train of thought that you're going with a little bit is, we're trying to get rid of the feeling, and
Right.
the idea of trying to get rid of a bad feeling is a big part of the problem. That's why we try to escape it, try to bury it, don't want to deal with it. It doesn't feel comfortable to be uncomfortable. And that's why I would take refuge in the food. It was easier to either be caught up in some kind of wonderful overeating, delicious food incident, or either that or diving into some new fabulous diet plan. It was some way of escaping those disquieting states. So now instead, you learn that you can actually be present with disquieting states, and they will simply change. If you identify with them or push them away, they're going to exaggerate their presence. You may finish this conversation still feeling tense, but you will be the examples we're talking about, but it will not have exaggerated, and you will along the way gain some insights into a part of yourself that can be present with this unsettling states and difficult situations without being so reactive, either by snapping out in what you say, in what you do.
Right. It's kind of like just the practice of awareness. So the more aware that that's who you are and that's there, the less it grows.
Yes.
Because you become familiar that it's there. You're not trying to do anything. By trying to do something to it, you're making it a bigger giant.
Thank you. That's exactly right. And this also, can you imagine the effect this must have on self-confidence? Because you start to see your ability to be in so many situations that were so uncomfortable for you before. And these can be just little things that happen daily. These are the things that cause people the most misery, is our little bits of reaction with our family members, our coworkers, anything in life, situations, our house, things start falling apart. You just use it in every one of these situations. It's just a better way of living.
Yeah, and it's so important to learn both the doing and the being, because we have a lot of doing in life, so we can't just think that we're going to get really good at the formal practice of just meditation, because then we could, although that helps people learn to be more focused, but I think that's really
the training ground.
That is the training ground, but it's like I think the master is the person that can switch between the doing and the being, and the doing and the being, because that's life.
You want it to be as seamless as possible, and that just comes with more and more practice. So as I said earlier, it's dose respondent. The more that you do this formally and are transferred to informally, and this might be a good way to give people, kind of as we get toward the end of our time, to give them a quick takeaway tool. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I usually say, what are 3 tips that you can give the listener to begin the mindfulness?
Yeah, this would do both of those things. And I have it in the Mindful Vegan too as a tool. It's called STOP. And that's an acronym for a process that you can do at any point, any time. And what it stands for is this. And you can do it any time during the day. You don't want to wait for a crisis point. That's why it's important to do formal training instead of thinking you can just apply this all when things blow up in your face. But S stands for stop. So at any point in time, whether you're in distress or not, whether you just all of a sudden you realize, oh, I have been lost in thought, or something has come up in front of you, anything that reminds you to just be present, you simply stop. And then you take a breath. That's the T. And then third is the O, which is observe. Observe meaning what is right now. Observe what is going on in your body. Observe what the situation is, where you are present. And then P is to proceed. And you can do this in like 5 or 6 seconds. It doesn't sound like much, but what it does is it brings you out of mind-wandering state into the present. So stop is to stop. T is take a breath. You can feel the sensations of the breath. Observe. You might even be able to connect. Is there some physical sensation? Are your shoulders up to your ears? You know, that like Friday neck, I call it. Or is there a wad of tension in your stomach and you don't know why, or you do know why? You don't have to do anything about it. Just observe that it's there. And then proceed is to proceed with whatever it is that you are doing. Just move on forward. And this starts to build that practice of bringing yourself back into the present moment, which, as we've been talking about for this last hour, has so many properties of bringing you more skillful living, connecting you more with your innate happiness, your innate equanimity. And this also allows you to be more compassionate in absolutely everything that you do and every person that you connect with. Not every instance, not every time. We're not talking about perfect meditator here. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. That's why they call it, that's why we call it a practice. We don't call it a perfect. We call it a practice. Just like yoga. Yeah, it's a practice. So,
and Lani, I just have a couple quick questions. One is about the program itself. So is it the program all inclusive in the book? Is it part online, or is it all in your book?
It's all inclusive in the book, all the instruction, but I have added a bonus. I am currently in the process of making 30 audio support MP3 downloads that are free of charge. It tells you in the book how to get to them. It's kind of in the introduction and also in the resources at the end. They'll be on my website where you can go and you could download all 30 days. So you would have, I told you, I want people doing this. I want them to try it on. So everything I can do to make that possible. You have the book, you would have 30 days. Yeah, so day 1 is like 1 day's audio teaching the very first thing, position. And day 2 is 2 minutes, which teaches the anchor point at the breath. And it goes from there. And it isn't like that I talk through the all minutes every day. As time goes on, there's more and more quiet space so that you can simply be practicing. But those, I'm working on those now, and those should be ready by a book release on October 10th. But pre-orders are up now, and and there is a bonus gift with the pre-order gifts. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Tell them how they can get the bonus gifts and how they can get your book, and while you're at it, tell them how they can follow your work.
Okay. Well, the bonus gift is for pre-ordering, which is official terms. That means any day before the official release of a book is called pre-orders. So that's, and because the book's up on Amazon, it's up on Barnes & Noble, it's up all over the place. So I have a page on my website, which is at LaniMuelrath.com or the mindfulveganbook.com. I'll take you to the same place. And you'll see in the navigation there that the pre-order page for the Mindful Vegan is there. And once you order your book from Amazon or Barnes & Noble or anywhere, all you do is come back in and put your name and your receipt number in a window, and this will give you a ticket to the virtual retreat, which is coming up on October about the 19th, right after book release. I'm going to do I told you I want people getting going. So I'm going to do a 4-day virtual retreat where simply on day 1, I'll send everyone a phone number. I'll be on a webcast and phone call with you just for half an hour to give some basic instruction, even though you have the book in front of you, just to get going and answer some questions. And then back again on day 4. So we'll go through day 4, 1 through 4, and again, some instruction and some Q&A. So it's a real nice bonus for getting you on board and getting started.
Yeah.
And I also have already put up a recording that's downloadable now for pre-orders for day 4, which is 4 minutes of practice that coordinates with the book. And I also made a restorative yoga video. It's about a 5 or 6 minute video with a very simple yoga position that is very helpful for bringing you back into your body. So that's the bonus gifts connected with.
Cool. Very nice.
Yeah, and then there's my newsletter there, and there are lots of resources for lots of things that are pertinent to all of this.
Yeah, so for everyone listening today, there's not that many days left. So get on it. Go to that website and get the pre-order gifts and buy that book. We all need to become definitely more mindful vegans. So on that note, Lani, I'm going to end and say thank you so much and congratulations. And I know it'll be a great success, and it's a work that's been really needed. I love that you connected it with veganism and mindfulness.
Thank you.
It's just so wonderful. I love that connection. So thanks so much.
Thank you, and thanks for the honor for being on your show again. I really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for being here.
Okay, Lani, you have a great day.
Thank you.
Well, you guys, I think we all need to buy Lani's new book, The Mindful Vegan, and we need to start that 30-day program, don't you? I sure want to try it. And 1 minute on day one, I can handle that, can't you? I love that it builds up, though, little by little, and that it teaches you the informal practice along with the formal practice, as she called it. So let's make it our goal to live life being mindful, okay? And if we all do it, the world would be a better place, because then we'd treat each other better and we'd like ourselves more. And we'd be more focused on what we're doing. Imagine how many less accidents there would be if we were mindful. Imagine how many people would eat better and be healthier. And what's the outcome of a healthier eating population? Wow, we can go a lot of places with that one. So there's a big reward for all of us if we do this work. Let's do it together, okay? All right, I'm not going to keep you any longer. But when you finish here, be sure to go buy that book via the pre-order, because there's only a few more days left to get your free gifts. All right, you guys, I'm going to sign off for today. You know what time it is, right? Yep, it's time to say goodbye. I hope you've enjoyed the show today, my podcast family. Vidal has spoken. Remember, you heal with a plant-powered diet, homeopathy, being mindful, and detoxing, of course. Peace, be healthy, be free, live life.